Good evening, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Welcome to the Free Black Women's Library Virtual Reading Club February session. Welcome to everybody in this space. Before we get into the conversation about the book, I just want folks to know that next month, for the month of March, we're actually reading two books. One is called Passing. It's written by Nella Larson. And another is called Sula, and it's written by Toni Morrison. So what we do is every month we jump between classic and contemporary text. One month we read something more new. One month we read something more old. Next month we're reading two books because Nella Passing is a very short novel, and also because I would like us to have a conversation that connects different themes between these two stories. Each one is about, all right, I'm gonna. Somebody is trying to, okay. Yeah, so there's similar themes between the two books. Each one is about friendship, relationship between these two women, and there's also themes around like respectability and navigating intimacy. Um, I'm going to put the waiting room thing back on. Somebody's trying to infiltrate our meeting. That happens sometimes, so I apologize for that. There's these folks that like to infiltrate spaces where Black women are centered, where Black people are centered, where Black creativity is being discussed, especially in virtual spaces. It happens every once in a while, whether it's on through social media or through the Zooms that I have. People infiltrate, they leave profanity in the chat. It's a bunch of like weird behavior that goes on. So I apologize for that. But yeah, if you need access to the two books for next month, I have both books. I have a PDF of both books that I can email you. So if you're in a space where you're not able to purchase them or you can't find them in your library, I could send them to you, the complete PDF of both books. So just send me an email at the freeblackwomanslibrary@gmail.com and I'll send those right over. So yeah, I should say hi first. And my name is Ola. I'm tuning in from Brooklyn, New York. And welcome. I started a project called the Free Black Women's Library in 2015 that now features over 5,000 books written by Black women. And the space is located in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. It's open 4 days a week, and you're welcome to come and read books in this space, come and write in this space, as well as take part in different workshops that go on. We have writing workshops once a month, and we also have like some type of art and creative workshop happening once a month. Today we had a drawing and painting workshop in this space. Nine times out of 10, the workshop will be led by a Black woman. In April, we're having a poetry workshop, which will be happening virtually. So for those of you who aren't in New York, but want to take part in one of our workshops, we'll have a virtual workshop in April. Yeah, so that's it. That's the spiel about the library. So I just would love to hear from folks in this space. Let me know your names, where you're tuning in from, and let me know how you felt about this book, The Two Lives of Sara. It's like a blending of historical fiction and romance with a little bit of coming of age in a way to me, as far as like Sara's story. But yeah, this is exciting. I'm glad you think it's exciting. It's exciting for me too. So I am going to ask, I'm just going to pick somebody at random, and then I can ask that person to pick the next person. And if you don't want to leave your camera on, you can leave it off. That's perfectly fine. And if you don't feel like speaking, that's fine as well. Just let us know in the chat, like if you're in a space where you're not able to speak and things like that. So I'm going to pick Tamika Sims.
Hello, how are you? I was thinking, I was like, don't pick me, don't pick me. And then
I heard you and I said, I'm picking you.
I thought it was a good read. I was a little torn by I don't know, like Sarah, she was complex. She kind of got on my nerves a little bit. She's a little selfish, I thought, in the way that she handled things. Somebody keeps texting me. And the way that she handled things. But grief is weird because everybody deals with it differently. It's just I just felt she was a little selfish, but I thought it was a good read overall. It was kind of triggering because I have a great loss that I'm like working through, so I didn't expect it to kind of trigger me, but it was a good read. So thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was a good read, and I also thought it was very, very sad. I really like Catherine Adel West, the person who wrote this book, is actually going to be joining us in like 12 minutes.
Oh,
So if anybody has any specific questions for her about her writing process, publishing, inspiration, all that type of stuff, feel free to like raise your hand or put it in the chat and I can ask her, or you can raise your hand or you can ask her. But it definitely left me with a really heavy feeling towards the end, especially like with the fire. I was like, oh my God, this is heartbreaking. I literally almost started tearing up when the fire happened, when Mama Sugar's space caught fire. And then the way that the community and the church folk kind of rallied around everybody, I thought that was so wholesome and so beautiful and so touching. And it kind of reminded me of like the importance of community and the importance of having support. Like Sarah had been resisting connecting to people. Sarah had been resisting being a part of the community. And then at that point, she finally was like, why am I doing this? Like, these people actually care about me. They don't want nothing from me. They just want to care for me. So I thought that was a good lesson for her to learn. And the fact that the house was rebuilt and different, but still running. I was like, okay, out of the ashes, we have a new. Whew. But then when Jonas died, I was like, what? Like, what? Oh my God. Woo, child. So that kind of broke my heart. Oh, Catherine is already here. She's early. I guess I can let her in. I thought we could talk a little bit more, but she's here, so I'm gonna let her in. And if anybody else wants to share, maybe Faye. I'm picking on people who have the cameras on. Hi, Catherine.
Hello, how are you?
Welcome.
Thank
Excited to
you.
have you here. Excited to talk about your book. We just started, and I'm just asking folks to, if anybody wants to like share their initial feelings about the book or anything. I'm asking folks, but not putting pressure on people to speak. And I also let folks know that if they wanted to ask you any questions or give you like any commentary or like feedback about the story, they could also do that as well.
Yeah.
I had just emailed, I don't know if you got my email from like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, you wanted me to read an excerpt?
Yeah, if you feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah, give me a second because my eyes are a little tired and I just got back from like another event. So give me 2 quick seconds and
Take
I
your
will open up
time.
something
Take your
right
time. Take
here.
your time. Yeah, I meant to send you that email earlier, but take your time. Faye, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. So, good evening, everyone. I am from Atlanta, and I just want to start by saying I am thrilled to be here. It is so exciting to be in a space with like-minded people. And I'm recently retired and anxious to really start reading again like I used to. Catherine, this was a great first read for me in my journey. I will say that I too was on an emotional roller coaster throughout the entire book. And I was, to make myself feel better about it, I was giving my husband kind of blow by blow things of what was happening. I can't believe Jonas died. I was kind of expecting him to die in the fire, actually. Sort of, if you watch This Is Us, kind of This Is Us moment.
I know.
Right.
And I tell you that played through my head because I know how it was with Jack. And you're like, oh, he's saved. Thank you,
Yes.
Jesus.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I know. And I'm not sorry I did what I did.
Well, it gave us a little while longer with Jonas, but that I felt the loss, let me tell you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am, Miss Faye. So um The Two Lives of Sara is a companion book to Saving Ruby King. And for anybody who's read Saving Ruby King, I think they knew what was coming because I essentially that's what I said in the book. I let people know in Saving Ruby King what was coming. But if The Two Lives of Sara was the first book that you picked up from me, it what happened to Jonas hit you like a ton of bricks. And I completely intended for it to, rip your heart out unapologetically because um, when you read Saving Ruby King, you need to know why Sara was the way she was and kind of that final nail in the coffin in terms of her being able to kind of evolve past her trauma. Like there needed to be something that hardened her in such a way that when you see how she behaves in my debut novel, you're like, oh, okay. You don't condone it, you just understand.
So I unfortunately didn't read Saving Ruby King, so I'm not familiar with Sarah's story. And I love that you're unapologetically like breaking our hearts. That feels a little cruel, but I love that you have no apology around that. But tell us a little bit about like how you got started as a writer and what is it that draws you to historical fiction specifically?
Yeah. And then Miss Ola, please let me know when you want me to read an excerpt. I'll read the excerpt because I have it right in front of me. So let me know when you want me to do that. I'll do it. I'll do it whenever you would like.
Okie
So
dokie.
in terms of what got as a writer, I always loved writing, enjoyed writing. I just didn't think I could make a tangible living at it. That just I felt only happened to a select few people. So I used my passion of writing and just was like, okay, so how can I commoditize something that I like to do? And I decided to major in journalism and I got a couple of degrees in journalism. And then when I discovered like journalists, like newsroom journalists don't make a lot of money, I was like, I ain't gonna do that. But you make money editing. So I decided to become a newswire editor and I just edited, press releases literally for like 17 years is what I did. When I was in my early 30s, I decided to write, start kind of writing again. So I dipped my toe back into short story writing. And I was talking with a friend of mine, an old college buddy of mine, at another friend's wedding. And I was telling her an idea for a short story. She said, oh, that would make a really good book. She had already written, some books that were traditionally published. And I was thinking, oh, how hard can that be? Like, I know how to write. I have a couple of degrees. Um, should be easy, right? And like, no, writing a book it doesn't matter. Like, writing a book is difficult. Doesn't matter what your background is. And so I took me 5 years to write Saving Ruby King. I got a literary agent and I got a publishing deal off the first book I ever wrote. So God is good. And then the way the Two Lives of Sara came to be is at the end of Saving Ruby King. Um, there's a part where Sara reminisces on time she spent in Memphis. And originally, this was just like a really pretty, half paragraph I decided to insert. I was like, oh, like, look at me writing flowery, sensitive things, blah, 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 blah. And when Saving Ruby King did pretty well, my publisher was like, okay, so what's the next book? And I'm like, oh, I mean, I could write about Sara and this particular time in Memphis because I wanted to know about it, but I didn't really think that they were like, go for it, go for it. And they were like, yeah, great. And I'm like, crap, because I put it in Memphis. I haven't stepped a foot in Memphis, still haven't. I was going to, but kind of COVID squashed that idea. And the reason I didn't really gravitate toward historical fiction, like I didn't choose the thug life chose me. For that particular part, like that's what it was. Saving Ruby King is contemporary fiction.
Okay.
This was the first foray into historical fiction. I'm sure it's not my last, but this was my first foray into, historical fiction. So I had to do like tons of research, reading books, articles, academic papers, searching down old photos. I did, Zoom interviews with Native Memphians about their times during the 60s. So it could be as authentic as possible. And I could correctly represent this wonderful city because I was not trying to I'm just going to write about this and I don't know nothing about it because no. So I tried to do everything I possibly could to correctly represent the book and also infuse as much Black culture into the book as I could handle, like a jelly donut till it pops. You know what I mean? Just can you let me fit some more. Let me do some. Let me fit some more. So, that was definitely my emphasis. But originally, the Two Lives of Sara was just a couple of throwaway lines from a book that I never thought would get published. So there you have it.
That's amazing. And I'm glad to hear that you put all that research into the historical aspect of it because it really shows. There's nothing more frustrating than reading a book about a certain time period or a certain place and you don't feel the energy or the flavor of that time period and place within the text. And I really felt it in yours. I'm a little bit surprised because I would have guessed that maybe you were from Memphis or knew somebody or had some type of connection to that city. So what was it that made you choose Memphis?
It was a throwaway line.
Literally.
I didn't know. Memphis just sounded nice.
So where are you from actually?
Atlanta. It could have been Houston. It could have been San Francisco. Memphis just sounded poetic with what I was writing. I backed myself into a corner. Honestly. I'm sorry. What was your question?
I was asking where are you from actually?
I'm born and raised in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago.
Okay, so kind of southern. I know people from Chicago who consider Chicago the South, but
I don't know how because we are not. Like,
I have a
I
friend
mean, even in
swears,
Illinois, we're at the northern point of Illinois, so I'm not too sure how somebody would consider
I don't think she means like technically. I think she means in terms of like culture and tone.
Well, yeah. I mean, in terms of the Great Migration, I mean, we went, we was Los Angeles, Detroit, Chicago, Harlem. Those were like kind of the main, Columbus, Ohio. Those were kind of like the main hubs. So there's like definitely absolutely Southern influence. I mean, like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. The way that we cook, how we cook. No, who really made the macaroni? Who really made the potato salad? That kind of, thing. So yeah, absolutely heavily Southern influence city due to the Great Migration. But I'm not gonna perpetrate like, oh, I'm Southern. I'm like, no, as soon as I step foot into Atlanta, they're like, oh, you're not from here. Like, no, I'm not.
Yeah. I also, you brought up food. I love the presence of food in the story as well. Like some of the meals that Mama Sugar was making was sounding too good. Okay. Especially that plate that Sarah threw on the floor towards the end with the catfish.
Oh, girl, I was mad she did that. I mean, it had perch, macaroni and cheese, greens, yeah. I was mad at her too. I was like, you disrespectful heifer. You could have at least ate. You know it was good, and I think it had like butter rolls too, or biscuits.
So good. It sounded amazing. It sounded amazing. So
Right.
as far as like the Sarah character, is she inspired by somebody in your life, or how did she come to be?
Sarah is pretty much me.
Mm.
Not all the things that happened to her. Let me set that straight. In terms of her personality, Sarah has very little chill and she has a very smart mouth. So the part where Mama Sugar is trying to convince her to come to the revival, and Jonas is like, "Well, I'm going to be there too." And she was like, "So your smiling some potato salad is supposed to make me want to go?" Like, that's me. When Jonas says, you snort when you laugh. She said, your tie is crooked and your pants are too short. I can see your socks. That's me. Like, okay, cool. So I'm getting ready to roast you. I'm just gonna go, as my mom says, like, I'll just go for the jugular. Like, you tried me, it didn't work. Now I'm getting ready to tell you that Mr. Lee ain't even your real daddy. It's Mr. Greg. You didn't know? Like, I am Sarah to a certain extent, right? Um, so the whole thing with um trying to figure out who Sarah was, it wasn't that difficult. I think trying to find her realistic reactions to trauma, and doing it in such a believable way was difficult since I hadn't experienced that type of trauma, and I needed to make sure I did it in a realistic way, but I did it in a sensitive way because we're dealing with a heavy subject. So yeah, Sarah, Sarah, a lot of her that's essentially me. The grit, the determination, a lot of the things, that was stuff that was imbued by my mom, my grandma, my aunts, other, Black women in the community. That was, Sarah's love of reading, especially her love of music and her love of reading of African American books. That was something my aunt Cynthia, she was very into. But Sarah's love of reading books, period, that was, me. But the whole blackity black aspect of everything Sarah read, had it not been for like my mom and my aunt and different teachers in elementary school, like I wouldn't know about any of it.
Yeah. Yeah, same. And unfortunately, that's still the case in 2023, especially with all these book bans going on and banning
I'm
people.
just waiting for the call about mine. Like,
Yeah, like it's just really problematic because it's bad enough that they're not adding books by Black women and Black people into your basic English high school curriculum. Now they're trying to ban them and say that you
actively
shouldn't even
ban
be
it.
reading them at all. So that's
Yeah.
super frustrating, really annoying. But I like what you said about Sarah being you, because I definitely enjoyed her character, like her sass, her attitude, the fact that she seemed really fearless, like she wasn't afraid of challenging any of the men around her, especially for this time period. She seemed really, she reminded me of Janie a little bit from Their Eyes Are Watching God. How, I don't want to say mouthy because I feel like that's insulting, but how vocal she was and how she was like completely herself. And even her attitude, like her attitude towards Cora, I felt that. I was feeling her on that, like who's this? Like just kind of like looking at everybody like, I don't know,
Side eye, you know what I mean? Because it's, yeah, because especially
perpetually.
when Yeah, because it's especially when you have like we all had a, like that bougie friend, and we love them to death, but you just be like, you doing a little too much. Like when they get married, you like, I might go into Brazil territory a little bit. Everybody has a core, right? But still just that loving fierceness, but just you didn't know Cora's story. And then we find out Cora's story, you like, oh,
Yeah.
hmm,
Yeah.
really? Because you know, her attitude and her demeanor is masking all of the pain and loss she feels, right? But it's like Sarah doesn't know because she's deep mired in her own pain, so she can't see past herself to somebody else. You know what I mean? Like she's just there as a very defense driven reactionary person. So when she meets Cora, you know, you just kind of when you go through what Sarah's gone through, you look for the bad, right? Because like that's what you've seen for the most part. And also it's kind of like that Drake song No New Friends. You know,
Right.
like she already had the people that she had. She's not looking for any type of new relationships or anything like that, because what does that do? That introduces the potential for more trauma and more hurt. So.
Yeah, there's definitely this thing that we do, um, as far as like defense mechanisms, as far as like trying to protect ourselves from harm, where we have a guard up. We don't want to get too close. We don't want people to get too close to us, because that can lead to them disappointing us. That can lead to them hurting us. That can lead to us being attached to them, and then them painfully and tragically dying in front of our eyes, bleeding in our arms, bleeding our hands. Ooh, child, why? But yeah. So I was feeling her on that. And if you wanted to share a passage from the book and just like give us a little bit of is the word exposition. I think there's only one person here who hasn't read the book, but if you want, you can give us a little bit of what's happening in this part that you're about to read.
Sure. So this is just the the very beginning of the second chapter. So I'm not really giving anything away. It's kind of a flashback scene where Sarah first meets Mama Sugar. So just a few paragraphs. So nothing, you know, that would spoil it or anything like that. All right. Naomi said you likely be arriving today. Come on in, sweetheart, she says. The night's so ungodly dark. I wonder if I'm still dreaming on a bus southbound from Memphis. But the warmth of her hands on mine signals I'm awake. Most folks around here call me Mama Sugar. Don't ask me where they got that name from. The scarlet poplar smells of melted bread. Excuse me, the scarlet poplar smells of melted butter, bread, saffron, and the bodies of hardworking men. On each side of the large white wooden door, Mama Sugar opens 3 windows to channel whatever meager coolness the now falling rain creates. So you, Sarah, am I right? You like to be called anything other than that? No, ma'am. I remain near the threshold. To my left, a living room, and in front of me are stairs, and to my right, a small hallway leading to a large kitchen at the back of the house. There's a weak rumble of thunder. Well, what my niece Naomi call you back home? Or your mama? Or your daddy? Sarah. Everyone calls me Sarah.
So just like I asked, thank you. So just like I asked you about like Sarah, is Mama Sugar based inspired by anybody specifically? Because I really would love to meet that person and have them adopt me for sure.
Mama Sugar was based on my grandma, and she passed away in 2003. So unfortunately, you know, Mr. Vanellis was based on a lot of men in my family. My uncle Cookie, my uncle Rudy. Um, my uncle Rudy is still here, alive, kicking and telling dad jokes. My uncle Cookie passed away a few months ago. Um, but it was Mr. Vanellis is literally like the older male figure that, like, when I was young, just let me get away with everything. So my mom was very, you know, mom wasn't. Yeah, my mom was strict, but she had to be because I was me and my brother was him, But because I'm a female, and you have like a lot of Black father figures, like we get away with any and everything. So I would always play that up. My Uncle Cookie, my Uncle Rudy, my dad, like I really didn't get, like I kind of got what I wanted, if I wanted, you know. So that was like, Mr. Van Ellis, that kind of tried and true, I'm always there for you, whatever you need type of person was based on an amalgam of those men. And Mama Sugar was based on like my grandma and, older women in my church that's just very much, I love you. Um, but I need to tell you the truth, but I will do it in as much of a loving way as possible. And also feed you while I tell you why you wrong, why you're wrong, you know. So that's who Mama Sugar was based off of, and I always try to insert some part of my grandma or people in my family who have gone on, because that kind of in a way keeps them with me.
Yeah,
That's just kind of like a little selfish on my part, but
that's beautiful. And it's a beautiful tribute and a beautiful way to honor them. So
thank you.
definitely love that. So when it came to the publishing and the editing process, how did that go for you? Did you have to like fight for any of your characters? Did you go through any back and forth as far as like the narrative, the language that you use, the way Black folks and Black culture was depicted? Because something I've heard in the past from some authors, depending on the publishing house, they are asked to change certain things, remove certain things, add certain, like, just sometimes there seems to be some not conflict, but tension that takes place, especially when you're writing an inherently like Black story. Did you experience that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's always something to be aware of. And I think the reason that's so prevalent is because publishing is so overwhelmingly white. And so even when you're doing Black centered stories, people expect whiteness to somehow be centered. I think sometimes when I would read reviews of the Two Lives of Sara, and I would see like, well, it was just really boring, or I didn't really get into it as much. I was like, what? Because there are literally no white characters in my book. There are none. President Kennedy gets mentioned in passing. Elvis gets mentioned in passing. There isn't even a tertiary white. Like I intentionally made sure to have this book as Black as possible. Like there are no white people, none. And when the whiteness is not centered, then there seems to be well, this book isn't really keeping my attention because Sarah doesn't have a friend named Clara, I guess, teaching her how to read. Everybody is independent in terms of what they're doing, how they make their money, good and bad. They're intelligent, well, well versed, business owners, doctors, educated, going to HBCUs, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So in terms of to answer your question, um, there were occasions in the book where I absolutely had to educate my editor, but she is a very open person. So she was willing to, she heard what I had to say. So for instance, when I got my edit letter back. So when you submit your first draft, the editor reads it, it gives you like a letter and just says, hey, these are the things I like. These are the things we got to work on. Okay. So when she gave me the edit letter back, she was like, yeah, so like when it came to Jonah's teaching, like, can we talk about or expound upon the friction that would have caused, and like, picketing, and how would, white parents have felt about that? And I was like, white parents wouldn't have felt any way about it because the schools were wholly segregated. Like I had to let her know that just because this stuff was happening in like Alabama and Mississippi, Tennessee did a whole different thing. So Tennessee decided not to blatantly show their racism. They kind of fought it in the courts. they quietly integrated like 13 students into white schools and just really made no mention about it in the press. Or they went through the courts to try to delay integration as much as they possibly could. That's why when they asked for volunteers for 13 students, a lot of Black parents was like, H no. You know what I mean? Like something happens to my baby. I mean, we're less than 10 years away from what happened with Emmett Till. So, nobody is trying to, no, I don't think so. So, like, the NAACP and Maxine Smith, who I believe, well, she was a mention. She was kind of going like hand, kind of hat in hand, being like, hey, please, somebody, can you, have your kids come and we can like talk about integrating the schools and, blah, blah, blah. So I had to tell my editor specifically, like, hey, that's not how it went in Memphis. There wasn't like a lot of picketing. Jonas didn't have to fight to teach his kids anything, any of these books, because like all his students was Black. He was literally preparing them to go out into a world where integration was a new thing, where we're like, what, less than 6 to 7 years from Emmett Till and less than 10 years from the Brown versus Board of Education. So like I had to let her know that stuff. And then she's like, oh, okay. And, then we could, continue to work on like other things in the book that, plotting and pacing and, shorten this and along that, because like a lot of the scenes in the kitchen were like a lot longer and I needed to tweak those. I mean, like I had a whole paragraph about clarifying butter for crunchy hash browns. Like, was that really necessary? No. But I mean, I know how to make crunchy hash browns now.
That's awesome. And that whole thing about the segregation, like I really like, I love Jonas. I love the Jonas character. And I was like, oh, like, let me find a Jonas in real life. Like, how can we make that happen? Because he seems so beautiful, so intelligent, so loving, so patient.
Yeah, but also a know-it-all, messy AF.
Yeah, I'll take all that too.
You'll take it until it's like the fifth time Jonas, if you don't pick up your socks. If you do not, if you don't come pick up your socks right now, I'm not getting ready to do this with you today.
For sure, for sure. Oh, we have a question in the chat. How old was Sarah? How old was Jonas?
So Sarah is in her super early 20s. I want to say between like 21 and 22. And Jonas, in the book I mentioned, was like 25. So there wasn't a big difference between the two of them age-wise, not at all.
Okay.
Well, and 24 and then 25. So.
And I appreciate the notes about segregation, especially because of the stuff I mentioned earlier. I'm in New York. I don't know how it is in other parts of the country right now, but in New York City, I have interns, young people that I work with who are in high school, who are taking English classes, writing classes at their high schools and like AP writing classes, and they have not read a book by one Black person. So I really appreciated the books that Jonas had William reading and those conversations about books, because it's really frustrating to meet somebody who loves books, who has never been assigned James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou, Alice Walker, like nothing throughout their whole high school experience. It doesn't make sense to me. And sometimes I wonder about what do we gain by integrating, but that's a rabbit hole that maybe I shouldn't go down. Go ahead, Dawn.
Hi, thank you for acknowledging my hand. I just wanted to ask the author, first of all, it was a wonderful read. I have not been a part of a book club for over 10 years. Shame on me, but I did finish the book. I dedicated all my extra time to this book this month. So pat my own self on the back for actually finishing, as it was such a good read. What was the time span of Sarah's journey in Memphis? Was it like about 2 years or a year and a half? Because it took them like a year to rebuild the house. Is that right?
Right. So Sarah's journey is relatively about like 3 or so years. So it's like from about 60 to 63-ish. Um, so it was, Lebanon is just born. It's, in 1960. The things that happened, it took, a year to build. So that's like, 61 to, 62. And then after the house is built, it's like a couple of, after the house is built, Jonas proposes to Sarah. And then about a week or so after that is when they get married. About a month or two after that, Sarah gets pregnant, and we all know what happens that,
Right.
and 62 of that summer to Jonas, Ola still isn't getting over that one.
Yeah.
And then, she has the baby that next year, in 63. And then, as we all know, goes back to Chicago.
Well, I just want to say you did a fantastic job. I mean, I think it's going to take time. I just finished literally this morning, and the initial reaction was more sadness, of wow, she had made such strides, and now she's going backwards. But by the afternoon, as I'm sitting here, I'm like, but wait, she did actually experience growth in Memphis, because now she can actually love her child. Now she actually verbalizes that she loves her baby, which didn't seem to initially be the case. So even though she may not have completed the arc that we were all hoping she did, I do feel like she did experience some very beneficial growth. And that's just my take on it. And like I said, I'm even having a different reaction in the afternoon versus what I had in the morning. So it'll probably take me time.
So the book Saving Ruby King, my debut novel, kind of finishes Sarah's story. And you may like it and you may not. I think what I strive to go for when it comes to my characters and their story is authenticity. I say this with my whole chest, but with a bunch of love behind it. I think a lot of people get very comfortable with books and expect happy endings, and they get really pissed off at you if you don't give them what they want. So sometimes they'll get a review and it's just like, it didn't have a happy ending and I don't like it. And with all due respect, I don't owe you a happy ending. I owe you a damn fine book, and I gave you a damn fine book. So for me, it's very much one of those things where I just owe you all of my skill and all of my wit and everything that I can put into this book. And with Saving Ruby King, which finishes Sarah's story off, and you get to meet Lebanon and an older Naomi and Violet and a bunch of other characters, and find out specifically what happened during those times. It fills in some more gaps, and it also tells the story of Sarah's grandchild Ruby. So that's why it's called Saving Ruby King. Um, Saving Ruby King and the Two Lives of Sara aren't like, I don't think Sarah's like a legit prequel. I just call it a companion novel. You can read them in any order. So you could read the Two Lives of Sara and Saving Ruby King, or you can read Saving Ruby King and then the Two Lives of Sara. So you can like flip flop or read it in any order. I think some people prefer to read the Two Lives of Sara and then read Saving Ruby King after. But then I've heard people prefer the opposite. Do you? Is the only thing I'm going to say. Whatever you feel the most comfortable with, please.
Well, I can't wait to read it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you writing it.
Thank you so much, Don. I appreciate you.
And I'm so fascinated by how you're like, I don't owe you a happy ending, like in your face, boom. Like that's really bold. That's really bold. I love it. I love it. I would like to be that fearless in my own writing. And It's true. I don't necessarily need a happy ending to think that a book is a good book. Toni Morrison wrote sad stories all the time, and I love Toni Morrison.
Hello, The Bluest Sky. I read that when I wanted to say I was like about 15, 16. I was emotionally not prepared. I was Jesus. Like it was, but like Toni Morrison and other artists, other authors, Octavia Butler, Hanya Yanagihara. Octavia Butler did Kindred. Hanya Yanagihara did A Little Life. So I felt that I should be able to write an ending that I wanted to write. The whole point, I think, and sometimes people make this mistake, like nobody is saying to agree with Sarah's decision. You don't have to agree with it. But Sarah is what I kind of call a cautionary tale. You can either deal with the trauma the way she dealt with it, or you deal with your trauma a different way, right? So, you don't have to understand somebody's decisions to still love them. There are people in our family and outside of our family where we're just like, but I love you, but and Sarah can be one of those people for you. I think somebody else had a question.
Yes. Their name is Rack. I'm not sure if I said it right. Ratch.
Rachel. Anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Rachel.
Yeah. Hello. Not really a question. I just wanted to say I enjoyed the read, and I really liked that towards the end when they were at the bus station, the doctor, I already forgot his name, sorry, Violet's husband, he was basically saying, oh, we want to keep him about Lebanon, and it didn't happen. So I really like that you put that part in where it was a struggle and he wanted to keep him and you wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
So I appreciated you inserting that in there. And I liked seeing the inner working of Sarah, even though there's some things I don't agree with that she was doing, but I like that she had the negative mindset and situations allowed her to overcome some of them, and she still had troubles, but it was a good read. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I think one of the things is like we can like the characters, but like I said, we ain't gonna have to vibe with everything.
Character.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like there are characters that are gonna make us uncomfortable with what they do and their choices, and I think that's a good thing, and to push you out of your comfort zone, to push me out of my comfort zone, because I particularly there were things that I wasn't vibing. I mean, and I wrote the book, and I'm sitting up here like, there really like. So I just feel that that scene you mentioned where Lawrence, it's actually Lawrence and Cora. Violet was her friend. So it was like Lawrence and Cora, and that one last like push to just be like, look, just give us both the kids, because whatever it is that you're struggling with, you're gonna take him down with you, and that's explored in Saving Ruby King, where there are going to be other instances with other characters, Lebanon specifically, where you're going to be like, oh hell no, right? But see, that's the thing. I think I'm not a successful writer if I don't get you to feel something. If you're not feeling anything, then I didn't do my job.
I wanted to grab Lebanon. I'm like, no, come on, please. I liked in the kitchen with Mama Sugar, and she broke down with her also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really nice.
That was another pivotal scene. One of my favorite scenes to write, though, was Jonas and Sarah's first date. That was like one of my favorite scenes. Right?
It was so beautiful.
Yeah, I loved it. I had such a good time with it, and just kind of the whole aspect of like kind of the regional diaspora of African Americans and what we do, and pop versus soda, and a pulled pork sandwich versus the barbecue sandwich. Because when I was interviewing, my interviewees from Memphis, and I had said a pulled pork sandwich, and it was like, it's a barbecue sandwich, and I'm like, specifically pulled pork is on it, so it's a pulled pork sandwich. And they're just like, well, that's redundant. I'm like, that's what's on the bun. Like, I literally, the conversation that they have about the pulled pork sandwich is the conversation that I had with them about it. And it's just like so funny, the different uh, uh, regional kind of things that we like, you don't really think about, going from the north to the south or the south to the north. So I absolutely wanted to add that in, because that was like so super funny. And then also that funny thing about, when Jonas is like, well, yeah, let's get you back home because we don't want Mr. Van Ellis, out there searching for us. And she's like, you don't even know. He was literally getting ready to chaperone us on this date, bro. Like, So, I mean, it was a really nice time to be a little light and funny and a little bit of romance and, yeah, so that was like absolutely one of my favorite things. I loved writing that. I loved writing the first dates.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the questioning and your feelings. Definitely, absolutely.
Tamika.
Hello, how are you? I just have a quick question. I heard you mention that it's not really like a prequel sequel, but the Saving Ruby King will kind of explain what went on with Sarah afterwards. Because that was written first, was that your reasoning for not allowing Sarah to relax in the love that was around her and make her leave Memphis, or it had nothing to do with it, you just decided
Well, I mean, the book's a companion book, so as you stated, that means they're somewhat connected, right? So I couldn't, and Saving Ruby King, I allude to Sarah and what happens in Memphis. So I can't at that point change Memphis to Atlanta or change Memphis to New York City. I can't change Jonas's name, and I can't unfortunately change what happens to Jonas. And once again, these are supposed to be some throwaway lines from a book that wasn't even supposed to get published. Okay. So once these things happen, I back myself into a corner and a couple of plot points that I have to adhere to. So Sarah ultimately has to go back to Chicago. If she doesn't, the occurrences in Saving Ruby King can't happen. What pushes her to go back to Chicago can be anything, but we all know that what happens to Jonas is the catalyst for it. We don't know specifically what happens to Jonas. And trust me, if I could have found a way to get around, killing Jonas, trust me, I would have done it, because by that time I had fallen in love with him. And there really wasn't, unfortunately, anything I could do about that. So that's why I try to give you guys the scene where the Scarlet Poplar breaks down and you're like, oh Lord, this is it, but it's not it. So we get to have Jonas a little longer, and we get to know about him a little more, and that makes us appreciate him as a character, even more. When I tell you I procrastinated writing that scene where he dies, like I tried to put it off for a whole week, and I was like, I gotta do it. So I did it, and I felt like crap. But then again, to me, it served a higher purpose into solidifying who Sarah was and who eventually she'd become. Good, bad, and ugly. And in Ruby King, it's ugly, like it is. But that's what happens, when it's unresolved trauma and, not wanting to kind of deal with that, and then also not having the resources, because in terms of mental health, like the resources are just being provided now.
Right.
Now. Like 10 years ago, if you told somebody you were seeing a therapist, they'd be like, is something really wrong?
Right.
So it's just one of those things where, I, in a lot of instances, I didn't have much of a choice, but I hope that the takeaway from it is that there were things that, happen, but like, how do you deal with it? How would you deal with it, as opposed to how Sarah would deal with it?
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for the question.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tamika. Johnny, you can go.
First of all, I'd like to say that you were a success with me, because The book made me feel many things. I was all over the place. I was happy at times and sad at times. And I am so glad to know that there is saving Ruby Kane, because in my mind, what happened to this person? What happened to that person? I just want to know. So, of course, I'm going to be reading that book also. And you also made the comment about Black, or somebody made the comment about Black authors not being presented to our children and other folks.
Ola made that one. Yep.
Yeah, but I retired in 2020. I've always wanted to be a member of a book club. I live in coastal South Carolina, and I tried to get some of my sisters to form a book club with me and had not been able to do that. So I decided that I'm just going to join a book club. I and my name was put out there, and I think when they found out I was a Black female, I did not get any calls for the book clubs, and there are many of them around here. So that has been disappointing. I have, during the pandemic, I joined a book club. And what I did notice is that we selected books, but the books about Black people or by Black people were not read by most of the members of the club. So you couldn't have a discussion about the book because really nobody read the book. And that is very disappointing to me. So I'm very happy to be here in this discussion, where we can hear from us, we can talk about the entire book. People have actually read the book. So I appreciate this opportunity and all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Johnny, and trust me, I appreciate it too. I mean, there's nothing like being an African American author and actually do a book club and it's full of white women. That is an experience. That is very much like, because sometimes they expect you to be teacher too. And I'm like, mm-mm. So there are these books that you can read because like I'm not your teacher. I wrote a book. Do you have questions about the book? And I'm not the representative of every African American that you met, or that you will meet. You know what I mean? So there's like, a lot of that where, like, oh, I didn't know, Spelman or Howard were real places. Of course you didn't. Like, because you didn't grow up, as an African American. So, like, and what's white is what's kind of panhandled as right, and the general, just the general kind of willingness to go outside of your whiteness doesn't, isn't really prioritized. Whereas like African Americans and Latinx Americans and Asian Americans, we're always forced to go outside of our comfort zone because everything around us is so like Eurocentric. We don't have a choice from the things that we're made to read. I was very blessed because I had a family, my mom in particular, who's a reading, who is a retired reading English and literature teacher, and like my aunt Cynthia, and a lot of my other, extended family were just very like Black, like Nikki Giovanni, read Nikki Giovanni, read Maya Angelou, and even with them, there were still so many Black authors that fell through the cracks. Like I didn't really get up on Zora Neale Hurston until like I was in my early 20s. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't vibing with Octavia Butler till I was in my late 20s, early 30s. Like, like I still have a leg. And Petrie went into like my 30s, right? You know what I'm saying? And but like Langston Hughes, okay, I knew about, James Weldon Johnson, okay, I knew about, County Cullen, okay, I knew about, Paul Laurence Dunbar, I knew about, but like Black women authors, like I had to do a lot of that research, on my own, or be somehow introduced to it, because otherwise, there's a hole there. And then there's still like I didn't know who Bell Hooks was till she passed. So now I got to go back and read all of the feminist literature up, with Bell Hooks. You know what I mean? Like I always And I think we all always feel like we're doing a constant game of catch up because of the lack of or the desire to want to include different perspectives, like literary wise, you know. And then not to mention indigenous authors I don't know about, Latinx authors I don't know about, Asian authors I don't know about, because everything is just so Eurocentric. Like you're in high school reading The Scarlet Letter and Moby Dick, two of the most foreign ass, like, I'm looking at Hester Prynne like, people normally don't live past their 60s. You could have been poisonous, man, and been with the preacher, but you know, I guess you don't want to make a better life for you. Or with Moby Dick, and I'm sitting up here like, bro, look, we all have that big white whale. Just go to shore, drink a couple, you'll be fine. Like, why am I, why am I dealing with all of this? So I just kind of feel that by having more stories from people of color, and non-centered, non-white centered narratives, like the more we push for it, the more I think we'll be able to influence, what's read, influence what our children read. So then they don't feel like they're playing such a game of catch up when they get to be, older.
Yeah, definitely. It really, really frustrates me. I'm grateful that this project exists and gets the support that it does, because it kind of motivates me to keep going with it. But I also do feel like I'm playing catch up, because there's so many authors that I've discovered in my adulthood that would have really like affirmed me as a child, or as a high schooler who loved books and loved reading. They would have like affirmed my existence, affirmed my creativity, inspired me, motivated me, given me something relatable. And it's hard to enjoy school when all you're being taught about is that what you're taught kind of makes you feel like an other, or makes you feel like less than, or makes you feel like you're lacking. School doesn't feel like a nurturing space or a safe space for like Black children for that reason. But I don't want to take up someone else's time. Go ahead, Miss Joyce.
Let me unmute. Hello, everybody. Well, first of all, thank you, Ms. West, for this book. It was a gift from a friend, and I read it in 2 days. And then the day after I finished the book, my daughter told me about the Free Black Women's Library group. So I joined the group. So in less than a week, I received the book, read the book, joined this group, and here I am. So, and I am going to order Saving Ruby King when we get off of here. Amazon, I just keep it open all the time. So that's my first point. The second point is, thank you for the stories about Black love, because we don't hear that enough with Mama Sugar and Mr. Vanellis, and then of course with the two characters. I hate that he died, but she did have true love, so that was a good part. But so thank you for the Black love, because so many times we hear about single mothers, single Black mothers, and we don't hear about the other side of that relationship. And there are some positive Black marriages. There really are. So yeah, that's the second point. Oh, I have so many points. Third point, you were talking, or somebody talked about that there are not that many books in the school. So I am a retired English professor. I retired, oh, this is terrible, 39 years of experience, 6 years ago. I have been called back into military service. So they keep calling me back. So currently, I am teaching 2 AP classes at a local high school, and I live in Henry County, Virginia. So I am in the South. So right now, we are reading Their Eyes Were Watching God. I started it last week by Zora Neale Hurston. For the month of February, Black History Month. So on the announcements in the mornings, we have like 2 sentences about a Black person. So I've augmented their education. So every day in the month of February, I have talked about a Black author. Alice Walker, Amanda Gorman. These students had never heard of these people. Even in Henry County, Ann Spencer, who was a Harlem Renaissance poet, was born right here in Henry County and lived in Lynchburg. So I told them about her on last Friday. I did get some interest on that day, but you are so right. The students are not reading. And my third point is I belong to another book club, which is mostly them. We have read one book by an African-American female, and it was co-written. It was The Personal Librarian, Victoria Christopher Mary and Marie Benedict, is that her name? So that's the only book that we've read, and I've been in it almost a year, more like 9 months. And I suggested that book. So I will be suggesting more books by Black writers. And I started a book club for middle school girls. And we have read The Hate You Give. That was February's discussion. And then at February's discussion, they get the next book. And the next book is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. So
I read about that age, yeah.
Yes, and they're middle schoolers, and I taught that book in the 9th grade for years and years and years. And so we'll see what happens. But I am excited to be a part of this book club because I see people who look like me.
Well, I definitely appreciate you being here. And I think part of the beauty of this book club is like, we read books by Black women writers, but then we have people who come to book club who are literally from all over the world. And so even though we're all reading a book written by somebody who possibly looks like us, everybody comes with different perspectives, whether they be different cultural perspective, different spiritual beliefs. It's an intergenerational group. So we have people in high school, we have elders, and it's really nice to see the way people interpret a story based on like where they're from and where they stand in society. And I do want to recommend a book for your middle schoolers, if I could. One of my favorite middle school books, it's called Pieces of Me.
Oh, I have that one on the list.
And it's, yeah, that book is exquisite. It's such a good read for middle school.
That's Sharon, is that Sharon Draper? Is that
Renee Watson?
Renee,
Yeah. Absolutely wonderful. Love that book. And then of course the classic One Crazy Summer.
I didn't have that one on the list, but
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That's kind of an old one. So it's the story's a little bit dated because it's about 3 sisters who go to California to visit their mom who's in the Black Panther Party.
Okay.
But it's a fun read.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And if anyone else has recommendations, please let me know. I received a grant to do the book club and we end in June. But they're asking me to write another grant to do it next year. So I'm getting older, but I still have a lot of energy. So I probably will go ahead and write that grant again.
Middle school.
I'm mad that they have you writing grants every year. Why don't they just give you the money?
Well, this was the first year. There's we have they have a lot of money. They sold this hospital, and so they just give away all this money. And I was approached to write the grant, and of course I did, and I received the grant money to do it. And my book club is called the Hope Book Club. So it's pretty cool. The girls are wonderful. I think they're anxious to read because at that age they lose that love for reading because they become interested in boys. I don't know why, but anyway, they become interested in boys or other things take them away. But this is a good group.
There's also a set of books by an author named Rena Barron. It's the Maya trilogy. So you have Maya and the Lord of Shadows. It's a middle grade book. It has 3 books in the series.
Okay.
And it's riveting. I couldn't put it down. I'm like 42 reading middle grade. I couldn't put it down.
Well, I still love adolescent literature, and I'm
Me
68.
too.
Yeah, well, I'll just read anything, I'll read the back of the cereal box. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's called it's Rena Barron,
Okay.
and it's Maya and the Lord of Shadows, but that's
Okay.
like the last book in the whole trilogy.
Okay, thank you. Awesome.
All right. Who
Awesome.
is next?
C. Henderson.
Hello. Thank you. I'm Cynthia. That's the C for. Okay, I didn't like your book at first because I felt like Sarah was, whoa, it's me. This is happening. But as I started delving into the character, I started liking her a little bit more. I love Mama Sugar. And I loved all the people that surrounded her. And I loved how the community constantly came to Sarah's rescue, even though she didn't realize it at first. And then that's where I said, maybe I need to look at this a little bit more. And I am in a book club, and several of us have called and they said, I can't keep reading this. And I said, just keep going, keep going, keep going. So it was a very good book once you got into the character. And I know you told me it's based a little bit on you, and I liked your sassiness because I'm sassy at times and I'm very curt. I will tell you how I feel when I feel it, and I'll tell you what you need to do about it if I need to. So I like that about it, but I just wanted to say thank you because it is a good book. I really enjoyed it at the end. I didn't like that he died, but I understand why he did and how that would probably intertwine her next, the rest of her life. And I'm glad to see that there's like a sequel, but not a sequel. So I will be purchasing the Saving Ruby King so that I can see how you intertwine that one. And thank you for not being afraid to write that and say, pow, that's in your face.
Thank you, Miss Cynthia. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, I wrote Sarah, not to necessarily be a lovable character. And I think when you're an elder African-American female, and when I say elder, I mean all of y'all still look like y'all 30s and y'all in your 30s. But I think because the way that you all grew up, there's like, yo, we ain't got time for this. Like you keep going. We don't have time for it. If this is kind of how I was raised, because I used to be super sensitive when I was young, and things can make me cry and hurt my heart. And my mom appreciated my sensitivity, but at the same time, she's like, can't let it overtake you. She would say this: if crying would help, I would lay down and cry with you. But since it can't, what's your plan? And when I tell you that takes when I have to deal with publishing and the ups and downs of publishing and the ups and downs of writing, like now there isn't a like, woe is me. There's a like, okay, I'm gonna give myself a certain amount of time to feel that way about it, but like, what's my next step? What's my next move? And I think that's kind of how we're all geared towards it. I will say that now I feel that my elder statesmen, African-American females, y'all need to be a little bit softer to yourselves and allow yourselves to feel a certain way about things that have happened to you, whatever trauma that was overlooked or not respected or regarded. Like, give yourself time to feel the way you feel about it, because we do so much moving through stuff, we don't give ourselves enough time to recognize what has happened, to feel what has happened, to push past what has happened after we've reconciled what has happened. So I think that's kind of a way that the current generation of Black females, that's what we're learning to do, because our moms and our grandmas didn't know how to do it. But now we're learning, so then we can show y'all like, hey, look, this is what you need to do. With like, hey, why don't you try like a little bit of therapy? It helps to talk to people about how you're feeling so you can process your emotions in a healthy way. Because I think keeping secrets is healthy and it's not. Or sometimes we think keeping hurt bottled up, it helps the other person. It does not, and it certainly does not help. So yeah, but thank you so much, Miss.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because even though I can easily say I identified with some aspects of Sarah's character, I do feel like her whole attitude was built out of trauma. Like her way of being and her way of dealing with people was kind of a suppressing a way. She was trying to like suppress her own pain and not be vulnerable with folks. And I don't think that's the best way to deal with.
Vulnerable is a bad word when it comes, especially when it comes to Black females. Like vulnerable is a bad word. Like, nah, bruh, like, you ain't getting that close. Because if you do and you hurt me, then what? Then I feel dumb because I let you close.
Right.
And I don't mean, I ain't just talking about a female. I'm not just talking about a male. I'm talking about female relationships or platonic relationships. Like, like I said, Sarah is very reactionary because of her trauma. And it takes, it takes a lot to break her. The first, and not break her, I mean like break that shell. And the first person who was able to really do that was William.
I love that
That whole,
character.
you like me, don't you, Sarah? Boy, get out of here. Like,
I love William's character. I thought he was so sweet. And if anybody's going to soften a hard shell of a person, it's definitely a child, right? I feel like that's so I love what he represented for her and what he represented in the story. And then we got to kind of see him grow. And also that he was a boy and he was allowed to be human. I don't want to say soft, but he was allowed to show feelings and he was allowed to be fully fleshed out, show hurt and disappointment and everything like that. And I want to say real quick before I forget that I really love the poetic nature of your writing. And I wanted to ask you, like, have you ever written poetry, or is that something that you do? Because I feel like there was so many, especially like Jonas's letters and things he wrote about Sarah, it was so poetic. So do you write poetry too, or?
No, I feel like I'm a horrible poet. I've
Really?
tried it, in like a couple of instances, like I've had like a couple little poems published here and there, but that isn't, I don't feel that's my true calling. As you mentioned, like Amanda Gorman, like, I'm not her. I'm not Paul Laurence Dunbar. I ain't Langston Hughes. I'm not Maya Angelou or Nikki Giovanni. Like, no, 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 no. But I can fake it till I make it. So that's kind of what I had to do with Jonas. Uh, the poem that he wrote for Sarah that he read to her after the Scarlet Poplar broke down. That
So
is the only.
beautiful. It was so beautiful.
That was the only piece of poetry where I said, okay, well, that didn't suck. Okay, cool. Like that's about the highest compliment I was given to myself, because it was just very much I'm a stick with writing poetry. You can tell I read poetry, as you said, because of how I write. So I do love kind of my, flowery language and all of that. But uh, no, I had a couple little run-ins with poetry, but that's, to me, that's not my calling. But um I will say I appreciated, I liked the way that I was able to cobble that one point together. And I'm really happy that my publisher kept it in, because that was actually in the outline that I gave them. And I was like, doesn't seem like too bad a poem. Okay. And I can kind of reference that in its imagery and kind of use the imagery to let you know honestly what's going to happen to Jonas. When it says, when orange warms my blue black skin, and I was like, you know, I'm kind of trying to let you know low key, like he ain't gonna make it. You know what I mean? So without saying I'm gonna die, you know. So I think that was like the only part where I allowed myself some sort of leverage or you know some room to try something a little different. But I appreciate you thinking that I was at least decent at it, Ola. God bless you.
It was so beautiful. There was definitely like a rhythm and like a lyric nature to a lot of the passages. I love how you use color. I love how you talked about like the smells. It was just like it was one of those things. I appreciate a book that kind of touches on the different senses, whether it's sight, sound, taste, smell, like, because it really puts me in the story. And I just think you did that beautifully.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Donna.
I just want to say good evening, everybody. I am from the South. I'm from Louisiana. So this is my first book club, and I did read the book. It only took me 2 days to read.
Y'all are killing me. Y'all are killing me. I feel bad. I'm like, I'm on my.
I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed. It took me a week.
Yeah. Well,
I'll read fast. I read slow, I guess.
Apparently, yes. So do I.
Well, I'm not an educator. I'm in IT, but I enjoy reading books. And throughout my life, I always tried to read books by Black authors. So, and I was on Facebook and I came across the book club and I saw the book. So I ordered it from Amazon. And I want to say, just like everybody else, I fell in love with the book. I fell in love with Jonas, and I wanted to cry when he died because I felt so sorry for Sarah. But at the end, I was like mixed feelings. But then now, you know, I understood. But I am looking forward to reading the next book because I want to, you know, I guess I've been so used to seeing happy endings. And when I read that, I was like, but I was glad she was able to keep her son with her. And I was saying, well, that's going to keep her a little bit grounded where she can stick, because she still, you know, because in the beginning she didn't love her son. Now she has this love develop in her heart. So I said, that's going to help. What I'm hoping that's going to help her as she goes forward. But then I said, you know, sometimes we have to go back to our beginning for us to see where we're headed. And I say, and I thought that was kind of different, that she had to start back from her beginnings because she had to go back to her father's house. So I said, okay. I said, well, so I'm kind of interested to read the next book to see what's going to happen because she kind of intrigued me, and I'm like, okay. And like they say, so I'm like intrigued by the character, but like I say, I was very, very sad when Jonah died. And I love Mama Sugar because I love the way she was. I love the food because, you know, I'm Southern. I love the Southern food. And I love the descriptiveness that you describe everything, because I felt like I was a part of the book. I was like in the book, you know, that I could see and picture everything. So it was like I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Donna. I appreciate that. I will say with Saving Ruby King, it's about her granddaughter. You eventually find out what happened to what happens to Sarah in Lebanon. And might like it, you might not like it. But whatever it is, because I'm obviously trying not to do spoilers, just kind of be prepared for the fact that when you keep your trauma to yourself, it absolutely has consequences.
Yeah.
The whole point is to let your people know your trauma, what happened, why it happened. This is why I do this. This is why I react to this. Because when it doesn't, it perpetuates that generational kind of violence or that generational kind of curse or that trauma. So the whole point is to open your mouth and speak your truth.
Yeah. Okay.
Word.
Thank you.
Oh, we got a lot of questions now. Who's next?
Yes. Go ahead, Miss Kim.
Oh, you're still on
Can
mute.
you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so I really struggled with the reason that Lucky came back to kill Amos. I felt like, is there a backstory to him that I'm missing? Because I felt like if he was as mean and nasty and as street as he was, and everyone was, afraid of him, he could have found another way to get some money to take care of his daughter. So is something I'm missing about Lucky and the reason that he came?
Yeah, I don't feel like you're missing anything. I think that some people feel like, well, this is what I would have done, but when you're desperate, are you able to see every single way out? You know what I mean? No, you're not. You're focusing on this one thing, and also on the fact that why does everything seem to work out for him?
For them,
He
okay.
got my mom, and I'm trying to hustle and make this work and make that work. And you're also thinking that you're also assuming that he didn't have money. He did have money, but just the other amounts that he needed to help Diane keep going. We're talking about chemotherapy. This point, it's like super duper new, which means it's super duper expensive. So, Lucky could have been tapping out any and every resource. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I also kind of feel like when you're dealing with the desperation, the dude is your half brother and he owe you this money.
Okay.
Bro, you know what I mean? And then the only thing I did was a street justice and letting you know, I told you if you didn't give me this money, something was going to pop off.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, and so then so he burns down the Scarlet Poplar. But see, now he got to bounce because everybody kind of know he did.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because he's desperate. When you're desperate, you make rash decisions. Rash decisions that have ripple effects for not just you, everybody around.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Tana. Please tell me how to say it correctly.
Hello, everyone, and it's Tona. And I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, born and raised. So thank you very much for people loving on Sharon Draper. We love her too. And most definitely old school Nikki Giovanni to the core. We love her forever and ever and ever too. So yeah, I feel like I'm from the South, really. Cincinnati, Ohio feels like the South. It's even though, we're like one car ride 15 minutes away from Kentucky, which is the South, but we're the South. The book, as I started it, I was like, this is not for me. I'm going to put this book down. And then I got to the second chapter. I said, I'm not stopping. I've got to know how this is going to play out. What is going to happen? I was almost to the point where I was going to skip some chapters. I said, I need to know. I need to know. It was a wonderful book. The cooking, being African-American and living in a traditional African-American family with just family, it's about family. So when she was cooking, I said, that's my mama. That's my mama, because that's how we communicate. And sometimes it's not such a good thing with obesity. We're cooking and we're feeding the soul, but we're also feeding the bellies with our good food, which is wonderful. The book kept me on my toes. I'm gonna be honest. I was reading the audio book at work while I was working. I couldn't put it down. So throughout the whole day, I had my pods in, and people couldn't understand why they couldn't talk to me because I'm working and I'm reading. I can multitask, but I'd rather not multitask with what you have to say right now. I'm gonna do this work, and I'm gonna do the work of getting this book read, because I couldn't wait to come to my first book club. I've never been in a book club before, but I can say I really did have a book club as I think about it, because my sisters, they were reading, so I followed them. So I started reading. So my very first book that I ever read, and I knew I fell in love. No, I did not fall in love with those Judy Blume books my little friends gave me in elementary school. No, that was like, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. No, I did not fall in love with her either. I fell in love one summer. My father gave me the book Roots by Alex Haley. And I read that book from front to back. And he couldn't believe I read that. Was a big book for an elementary school student. And he said, well, did you really understand it? Not really. And that's when he gave me the education, because he's from a very small town in, well, I guess it wouldn't be so small now, but West Palm Beach, Florida. And yeah. And he's an old, it was then, he's passed on now, but he would be almost in his 90s now if he was still. So, he had to deal with segregation and not being able to go into the store because of the color of his skin. And then he had light eyes. So, they discriminated against him. But yeah, that was the first book that I fell in love with, was Alex Haley's Roots. That was my first book. But thank you so much for your writing. I can't wait for the rest, because I know more will come.
Thank you so much, Tona. I appreciate that. And you, I think for a lot of us, when we're dealing with like the first book that we read by a Black person, that truly changes, because I can tell you the first book that I read like Eurocentrically that I, completely freaked out on, and that was Great Expectations, right, by Charles Dickens. That was the first time I learned what a true plot twist was. But the book, like one of the books that really completely like changed me, written, it was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. That was the time when I was reading this book and I was like, bro, like I read it so much, I broke it. Like the binder, the binding of the book, just it split. And that's how much that book influenced me. And then, like I said, Zora Neale Hurston, How It Feels to Be Colored Me was my first introduction into Zora Neale Hurston, which is why I introduced it in the book. I wasn't as young as Will, unfortunately, reading this. Like you needed to add 10 years. I was like 22 when I first read How It Feels to Be Colored Me by Zora Neale Hurston. And that completely changed how I viewed myself, especially in a predominantly white society, because Zora Neale Hurston was, coming from, like me, kind of this kind of protected bubble where everybody is Black and everybody is telling you like, yeah, you're a little weird, but we love you, we accept you, and this is, your intelligence. It's kind of just who you are. Your precociousness is who you are. And then to be kind of thrust into a predominantly white society, then trying to figure out how to navigate that. Like I literally, even though this was written like 50, 60 years before I even discovered it, I was like, it still speaks to me now. And I think that like, yeah, I just, that to me is what a good author can do. And not to mention James Baldwin, like, baby, if I could bring one person back, okay? So yeah, Tona, I completely understand and I appreciate you and I appreciate your thoughtfulness. And I know sometimes Sarah can rub you the wrong way when you first meet her, but if you stick with her, you can, be a little bit, more understanding of who she is and why she does what she does.
Thank you so much.
I love it. I love a non-likable character. I love it. And yeah, James Baldwin is everything. And to those people who this is your first book club, I'm so honored. Please welcome. Please come back. We meet on the last Sunday of every month at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Next month, we're doing Passing by Nella Larson and Sula by Toni Morrison. And we usually just do one book, but next month we're doing two because both of those books are not that long and they also have similar themes that I would love for us to discuss. Go ahead, Reggie.
Oh, can I just say thank you so much to everybody in the comments and the chat. I do see them. I'm not ignoring you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And to Alyssa, who was talking about William, yes to everything you said.
Let's see, can y'all hear me?
Yes, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so first, like, what is life with this Black Girl Book Club on Zoom? Second, Catherine, like, being a Black author is what is life? So big ups to you for that, and living and doing all the things. As I sit here holding my reader's journal, thinking about writing notes about your book, um, being real AF, I was like, what? Who is this? Who is this girl? I mean, just like all the emotions and all the things and the frustrations, but fantasy is my first sort of reading genre of fantasy I mean, reading genre that I love. So I'm used to the chaos of a book, and I don't read too many books that have happy endings. Fantasy has some, but for the most part, you just gonna go through the ringer and then something completely different is gonna happen. I think I read 200 books last year, and maybe 15 of them had happy endings. So I also listen to audiobooks too, which helps me a little bit. So that that adds to my number.
You read
Um,
a book, you had read 200 books, 15% of them had happy endings. That's 7.5%. Gee, Willikers.
yeah, so I wasn't looking for the happy ending. I think I like to be entertained. And you said earlier, your goal is to give us a good damn book. And I think you did that regardless of if you liked the character, if you didn't like, if you hated somebody's guts. Um, if you read it all the way through, because DNFing is a thing and people will not finish a book in a quick hot second. And so if you got all the way through it, then it's a testament to the author. And so kudos to you for writing a book where people want to read it all the way through and figure out what happened, even if they hate the characters.
Thank you so much, Reggie. I appreciate it. And I completely understand. Now, truth be told, I don't really read a lot of fantasy, right? I gotta, start reading a little bit more outside my genre, because I feel that that'll just help me become a better writer. But I just want to say that in terms of being a Black author, and with the success that I've had, I don't take it lightly. I don't take any meeting, any book club, any chance to speak on a panel. Like, I don't take it lightly. I think because it's a way for me to spread our message about Black empowerment literature, and not just, Black empowerment, but just actual history and actual literature, and not being marginalized to certain sects because what we write or how we express makes somebody uncomfortable. Right. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I really feel like I need to do my due diligence. So thank you for seeing that. And thank you for seeing me. And I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Random side note about Black authors and book clubs. A friend of mine who is not like us has a book club, and all of the not like us authors go to that book club and do what you're doing now, which is wonderful. And they invited their first not like them person. And she called and she said, is it going to be different? And I was like, is what going to be different? And she's like, well, having a Black author in my non-Black book club, is it going to be different? And I said, I don't know. Is it going to be different? I
Like,
don't
what are you
know.
planning on asking? Can I cut your hair through Zoom? Like, what do
That
you
is going to depend on you. And and so that author said no, and I will not say who she is, but I know why she said no. Or I assume I know why
Yeah,
she
because
said.
the questions you might get previously, like, there was this one author, not one author, there was this one book club that, look, I'm gonna just say it was like it's one white book club, bunch of white women.
Yeah.
And this chick sent me some questions, and I was like, now how do I politely tell her to F off with these questions and and do it again?
And
So I
yeah,
had to politely figure out how to tell her, you better F off with these questions
yeah.
and find some new questions. And
Yeah.
really, I could just shut it down, but I'm like, this is my opportunity to educate. Because if I don't, you gonna come at somebody who doesn't have half the grace that I have.
Right.
Shut you down.
That's what
And
I
I will
told
be
her.
applauding, but at the same time, that means you're not gonna want to read another book by another author of color, and not want to invite another author of color. So let me try to tell you professionally why everything you ask me is problematic.
Right, right. And that's what I ended up telling her.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's what I did. But like, if your friend, to protect their peace, said no, your writing friend, Deuce is good.
yeah,
She
yeah,
doesn't have to. She doesn't have to. You know, we don't. We have to be the educators. If we choose to do so, fine. We know what comes along with that. But if we choose not to, and be like, what you
yeah.
need to read is 1619. You know, how to be an anti-racist.
Right.
You know, get your kids the book How to Be an Anti-Racist, and
Now I will be peeping in the audience when her narrators who agreed to go, when they go and do the book club. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll report back.
Yeah. Yeah, I give props to those Black folks who are willing to go through that labor to teach non-Black folks about Blackness and racism and prejudice and bias. Like, I give props to them, but I know that that's not my ministry. I don't have the patience or the capacity, which is why I focus on like Black folks specifically in my work, because I don't like, I'm not going to teach you how to be human or how to respect me as a creative being or how to respect my intellect. Like, I just can't. But I know that it's necessary work. So those who are good at it and those who do it, I support them, but know that it's not, I just can't. Miss Rogers.
Greetings from Texas, down south. I am, I'm just going to say it was fate and serendipity that my members of my book club, Cynthia, LaQuanisha, are here. We've been in the book club together for 23 years, and we are excited to join you today. Let me just say to the author, you had me at hello. The way your flowery language, your descriptions just painted a picture, and I was hooked from the moment I read the book. I'm looking forward to the next one. And we also meet on the fourth Sunday of every month at 4:00. So possibly we would be joining again at 5. So thank you for a wonderful selection. I'm so glad that I just ran up on the post, put it in our group me chat, and here we are. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I'm really happy that I'm honored to be here. More than happy, I'm just honored. And to tell you the truth, in terms of the book and how I write, I always make sure that the first line, and you have to, but the first line of the book, you got to, for lack of a better term, slap the reader. You gotta like just grab them and just be like, listen. You gotta take them by the collar and be like, what? Listen, look at this. And then keep them intrigued. I had to learn a lot about how to do that with books. And it's called pacing, when it makes you like want to like keep turning the pages, like, like we meet Sarah and we get used to it, and oh, she meets Jonas, and they don't like each other at first, but then at the end of the first chapter, like, Jonas is at her door with a battered aim. It's like, what the? And then you turn, and then they go on a date and they finally vibe, and you like, all right, we gonna get yeah. And then they driving down the street, and then the Scarlet Poplar done burned down. Will with, like, oh Lord, and then I know Jonas died. Sarah's pregnant. She gonna get a baby. She go. I just needed to find ways to to keep the attention of the audience. And I think the problem sometimes is some authors want to kind of treat a subject with kid gloves. And I don't mean not giving a theme or a scene or an issue the weight that it deserves, but I mean they don't want to get their hands dirty and dive like deep into the nitty gritty, all ugly feelings of what happens in the book. One of my other favorite scenes is near to the end where Sarah and Cora really get into it. And Cora's like, so Heifer, you the only one that thinks you've been through something? You actually had a live child. I didn't. I've had to do this. You think you're the only one who deals with a substance abuse issue? Heifer, I was drinking myself to sleep. That's how I was in that much pain. My husband didn't want to deal with his. I didn't want to deal with mine, but when she plastered that smile on our face and went to Sunday service. You know, we have to deal with those ignorant "God won't put more on us than we can bear" platitudes. Like it was literally like I didn't want to treat that with kid gloves. That was another one of my favorite scenes to write, especially when Sarah said Sarah was trying to be smart and said, "Oh, so you got a head shrink degree?" And she said, "No, my major was in history. I got a minor in psychology." I was like, because Sarah sometimes needs to be cut down. Sometimes I need to be cut down.
That was one of my favorite moments when she said that. I was like, "Ooh, Cora got a little fire in her."
Got a little bite to it. Don't let the nice little Diana Ross bob and the nice dress fool you. So
For real. We have. It looks like we have one question left, and then I have a question. And then we will wrap up. Is that cool? I know we're keeping you.
Absolutely fine. Absolutely
fine.
Right.
Go ahead, Miss Murphy.
The D is for Deborah.
Go ahead, Miss Deborah.
Hi. So, hello everyone. I'm happy to be in the book club. I'm getting back into reading, and everybody brought up their first author. I don't know if anybody even heard of my first Black author, but it was Trick Baby by Iceberg Slim. That was my first Black author. When I grew up, we had Harlequin romance. So we're reading all these Harlequin romance books. And I'm in Inglewood. I'm in Chicago. Oh. I grew up in Inglewood. And this guy he lived down the street and he would sit on the porch with me. And my mom knew his mom, so he could sit on our porch in the evenings. One night he got up and he left the book. And I picked up the book and I took it up in my room and I started reading. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, do people really live like this? Is this really true? So Trick Baby is about prostitutes and pimp daddies, pimps and all of this. And this is my first Black author. So I didn't know what to think of what I was reading. But I started reading all of his books. So now I'm thinking life outside of Inglewood is nothing but prostitutes and pimps. It was just hilarious. But, we've grown and I got to B.B. Moore Campbell and up the ladder and up the ladder. So now here I am with you, Catherine. First of all, growing up in Inglewood of Chicago, I related to Sarah on the first page. She couldn't do anything and say anything I hadn't already heard and experienced from one of my friends. But going through her journey with her and watching the suffering and all the little layers you put in there, you put so many hints in there. And I saw some of them. And I think the first one I caught is when she was reading Amos about coming in drunk and all this. And Amos, in his total drunkenness, how are you going to tell me about myself when you don't pick up your own child? I was like, okay, so everybody's watching everything and everyone knows what's going on. So with all this love between each other, trying to help each other, trying to, make, instead of tearing each other down, they were always trying to help each other. Even Sarah with Amos, because she threatened to beat him if he didn't come to certain things and just act right. You better be there, you better be presentable, and you better act right. If you don't, so she was helping him, Will and me, she was helping Amos and Will to mend. Now she can help others, but nobody can help her. She felt that bad about what had happened to her. She was totally scarred. And like everybody else, I thought Jonas was her savior. It's going to be all right now. But she was living in the real world. So Jonas left out of here. Because that's what we're used to in life, and she kept saying that life is not nice. She told Will, don't get used to having good things because someone's gonna always come along and take it from you. So it was a lot, but in the end, the book that Will was reading, and Sarah asked him about the book, and he told her, I don't like this one. It doesn't end well. People are not happy. And again, she told him, that's fine, deal with it. But it was like a prelude from you that this one is going to end well.
Like the last time she sees Will, he's reading The Street by Ann Petrie. And people who have read The Street know what happens with Ludi and Bub.
I haven't read it, but I will.
Oh, so it's kind of similar in terms of we did all of these things to try to make life work out for her son, Bub, but in the end, it fell apart because she had to, she ended up committing, an act of murder, and she essentially had to abandon her son. Right?
Yeah, he said
so it was this thing like he's reading The Street by Ann Petrie, and he doesn't know what's going to happen, but he's just like, yeah, it's like this book. But of course, Sarah's read it. So it's this part, there's this part where she was like, I don't tell him about what happens in the end, the part where I'm Ludi, I'm the mom, and he's Bub. Like he's kind of like my son, and like I'm leaving him. He doesn't know what's getting ready to happen. You know what I mean? And when you spoke about Harlequin, believe it or not, my book is both books are from Harlequin, but they're owned by HarperCollins, and there's an imprint called Park Row where that's how I was. That's my publisher. So I'm part of Harlequin. I mean, I'm not Iceberg Slim.
Okay.
But when you said Iceberg Slim, I was like, oh, I know who you're talking about.
That was a rude awakening and not the best depiction of a Black author. But that's what we had.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I almost fell out of here when you said Iceberg Slim.
That was hilarious.
You don't see me in my seat. That was crazy. But Miss Deborah, I'm so happy you like it. I'm so happy to have a fellow South Sider here. I feel you're close with me in Inglewood. I'm in Brainerd, Washington Heights.
Okay.
So I feel close to you.
All right then. Well, I really enjoyed it. I'm gonna read the other book also, the companion book. And again, I want to thank everyone for being in the book club, because it's all of you that make it such a wonderful place to be.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Oh my gosh. Thank you for saying that. It's true. Okay, so I have two questions for you, Catherine, just to close us out. I know that we've gone a little bit over time, but I always like to ask authors who come through to this space about this, especially because oftentimes we do have writers that come into the space, or people who would like to consider themselves writers or get published and things like that. So my first question is, in terms of your writing process, like, do you have specific writing rituals or things that you do, or like a system that works for you? Like Toni Morrison talks about getting up at 4 a.m. before her kids woke up, et cetera, et cetera. Because you talked about how it took you 5 years to write this book. So if you feel comfortable sharing, like, what's your process? Like, when you're writing a book, do you write chapter by chapter? Do you write characters? Like, how do you structure your story? And then my second question is, like, what is the one, I know there's several takeaways that we can take away from this book around like grief and community and trauma, but what is one takeaway that you hope that people can gather from Sarah's story? So those are my two questions.
You asked me about my process. That's trade secrets, like the KFC recipe. No, it's not at all. I don't really know what my I don't have a solid process. Like, I'm not even going to tell you that I am. Toni Morrison got up at 4 a.m. That's why she's canon. The reason it took me 5 years to write, now it didn't take me 5 years to write The Two Lives of Sara, it took me 5 years to write Saving Ruth King. It took me 5 years to write my debut novel. That's because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It was the first book I ever wrote. I thought it was just going to be, as I said, I'm sure I said this earlier in our discussion, I thought it was going to be an easy process, and it wasn't. To always keep myself humble, not like I get the big head when it comes to my writing because I'm so self-critical. To keep myself humble, I have the first kind of few chapters, few lines of Saving Ruby King that never even made it into this, to made it into the final chapter. They are trash. Like, horrible. And it's always funny when people are just like, you're such a good writer, and like, ew, like, I'm like, this don't flow for me. I fight for every word, every sentence, every paragraph. When it came to Saving Ruby King, I also didn't know or didn't realize that I could even do writing full time. So my job is very deadline intensive. And at my job, all I did was read all day. Like, I read all day. And then to try to come and then write a book, I'm just like, man. So Saving Ruby King, I would start and stop in fits. Like, I'd be really super dedicated for like a month or two and try to hammer away at it. And then for like a month to 3 months, I wouldn't do anything. Then I'd start it again, and then like a month or 2 months. And I got so tired of telling people that I was working on a book. So in April of 2017, I was about 15-20% left. And I just said, screw it. And the next 2 days, I think I wrote like 10,000, 12,000 words. Because I was done telling people that I'm writing a book. I wanted to say that I wrote it. And I knew by that point, I was 37. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to be like an acclaimed author. I knew that I wanted to, for Black History Month, be on one of those billboards, like Catherine Adel West, and she wrote these books. Like, I wanted to be a part of Black history, so I just stopped being in motion and just finished the process, or the process, if we have any Canadian people. And so, like, I finished it. The first draft was a muddled mess with potential. I didn't recognize that it was a muddled mess because I was so enamored with the fact that I finished this book that I thought, like, yes, I could be published. And I wasn't understanding like why necessarily, because like I didn't have any writing groups or like any mentors to really kind of say, hey, this is a Finding Forrester. I didn't happen upon Sean Connery to tell me what I needed to do. Like, I had to, figure a lot of it out myself with a lot of encouragement from other people. But they didn't really, they didn't know. They're just like, you can do it. And I'm like, but I have, So I think to this day is why I kind of work very singularly and solitarily. Like, you won't really catch me at like a writing retreat with a bunch of people because I'm just like, I don't want to write with a bunch of people. That helps other people. For me, it's just aggravating to have people around me when I write. So it's a pretty solitary process. With Saving Ruby King, I pantsed. I was just like, I'm just going to write a book. With the Two Lives of Sara, by this point, I'm under contract. I have a deadline and I have 9 months to write a book. They gave me a specific amount of money. I got to produce something. So, and also with Park Row, they wanted like 3 sample chapters, a full book outline, and a synopsis. So I had to provide all of that. They accepted it, said, okay, this is where we're good. We want this book, blah, 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 blah. And they wanted it by June of 2021. I had to write it by June of 2021. Now, mind you, I signed this contract. We're in COVID, deep in the beginning of COVID. I'm promoting Saving Ruby King, wrote 3 sample chapters, a whole book outline, and a synopsis. And then they're like, okay, do you think you can get it to us in March? Hell no, it's like September. And y'all didn't give me March money. So, they said, okay, well, what about June? So let's say fine. But I was so burnt out by September, I didn't write anything until January. January 9th of 2021 to be specific. And because I had the full book outline, I was able to finish May 23rd. So I wrote it in 5 months. But I had a whole book outline to help me. With the 3rd book, I am taking a break from the Saving King universe for just a bit. Take just a bit. I just want to write something different. And with this book, I'm kind of back to like pantsing. I have different notes and stuff written down, but I'm just like going with the flow. So I don't really have a set thing. It literally depends from book to book to book. I don't know. Like I don't get up at 5 in the morning and write. I just write when I feel like it. I come downstairs. Well, every day I come downstairs and I'll write. And I don't look at the word count because that just makes me anxious. And sometimes I play really nice mellow music and sometimes I play nothing at all. It literally just depends on the day. So that's kind of my creative process. I have none. It's chaotic AF like me. Once again, I'm an Aries. What are you gonna do?
I love that. I love that. It reminds me of Toni K. Bambara when she talks about her writing process in Black Women Writers at Work. And she talks about how sometimes like there's no rhythm or reason to it. Sometimes she just like immerses herself and she's just like writing and writing for days. And then sometimes it's like, I don't want to write. And I'm not going to.
And I'm not going to because I'm not going to go downstairs and force myself.
Yeah.
Because the only thing I want to do is put down crap that I'm going to have to redo later.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to do that. One thing that I want people to take away from Sara, and once again, ladies, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm honored to be here. The thing I want you to take away, the main thing I want you to take away from Sara is that no matter what has happened to you, you have the strength to pull through. Your strength to pull through may not look that way to somebody else. Somebody's idea of victory might not match your own, but it's what you expect of yourself and how you hold yourself accountable and what you do that, writes the end of your own story. Don't look to Sara necessarily as an example. Look to her as a peer. What would you tell her? How would you help her? What would you do if you was in that situation? The whole point is to honor the story, but not necessarily be judgmental of it because you don't know what would happen in those circumstances. To kind of open your mind to what other people may be going through and their trauma and to try to show them the little bit of love you wish you would have gotten if you was going through something similar. So that's what I would want for you to do.
Amazing. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Catherine. Like, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. I have to say this always, I always feel very honored and very privileged when I reach out to a writer and say, hey, would you come and talk to our book club? And they're like, yes, what time? Always. That's just like such a great feeling, because we get to really hear about like what brought this book out of you. So thank you for spending time with us,
Thank
answering
you
all
once
of
again
our,
for having me.
answering all of our questions. Wish you the best of luck. Can't wait to read your third book. But take your time, no pressure. And I want to say thank you to everyone who came. Thank you for your presence, your beauty, your brilliance. It's been amazing. I hope to see folks next month when we talk about Sula and passing. And once again, if you need them, let me know and I'll send you the PDFs to read them. And if there's certain books that you have read that you feel like, oh, I want to talk about this with the Free Black Women's Library, I'm always looking for titles. So definitely I'm open to suggestions. If you have books in mind, whether they're new books or old books, definitely please drop me an email. And I want to wish everyone a beautiful night and an amazing week. We're about to enter into Women's History Month, so I'm claiming it as Black Women's History Month. Please follow me on Instagram, join my Discord, join the reading challenge. We're reading 25 books by Black women in 1 year. There's a spreadsheet, it's on Storygraph, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, that's it. Thank y'all so much. And if you're
Again, I had a blast.
yes,
Thank
and if
you.
you're ever in Brooklyn, please come to the Free Black Women's Library space. We have 5,000 books written by Black women here that folks can come through, and we swap books every Sunday. Bring a
All those
book,
books,
take
I
a
might
book.
spend the night, forget a hotel. I'm just like, what did you do? I was wrapped in books. I was wrapped in.
Come on through. Come on through. We're having a writing workshop next month. So yeah, sending everybody lots of love, lots of love. Stay beautiful, stay creative. And yeah, thank y'all.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Night. Good night.
Thank you,
Night.
Catherine, for an amazing
Thank you
conversation.
so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.